And you know, Maryland Senator Van Hollen just went to El Salvador after meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He said he thinks that El Salvador was feeling some pressure, and that's why they let him meet with him. But ultimately, Nayib Bukele saying he's going to remain in the custody of El Salvador. We need to see more action, though, from people kind of emulating what we saw from Senator Van Hollen, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first of all, kudos to Senator Van Hollen. And honestly, that's what it looks like to be an elected representative. He represents Maryland. This is someone who is a Maryland resident, and he decided that he was going to go down there and check on him. And honestly, I don't know that I was convinced that he was alive. I really don't. And so I was happy to see that he was alive, number one. But number two, if Senator Van Hollen can get down there, if the president can get up here and get to the White House, then I don't understand why we can't get Abrego up out of there. I mean, we know that they admitted that they were wrong. Now they're trying to double back and say, well, he's this terrible person and all this kind of stuff. But here's the reality.
It would be true that the cover-up is worse than the crime for Donald Trump if the crimes weren't so blatant and so bad. And that is clearly the case with his unlawful deportation of Abrego Garcia. And every action he has taken since to try to cover up or shift the narrative. And he's been doing that with some of the most insane posts we have seen, not only out of his presidency, but in the entire time Donald Trump has been online, which is a pretty high standard to be able to clear. And Jasmine Crockett ripped into him for one of the latest ones, and then his response was even worse, but we're going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's get into Jasmine Crockett just calling out Donald Trump in this clip right here.
Congresswoman, it's good to see you. We just got that ruling at 1 a.m. from the United States Supreme Court. The court doubling back on an earlier ruling, giving the administration the go-ahead to deport these individuals. Do you feel hopeful, though, that the courts are trying to rein in Donald Trump? Are we really set in a constitutional crisis now? Because Trump flaunts the fact that he has no intentions of bringing Abrego Garcia back to America. I mean, check out what was posted on X yesterday by the official White House account.
Yeah, Katie, first of all, it's great to see you this morning. Yeah, so first of all, it's great to see you. And one of my colleagues actually put this post up in a group chat, and I was like, okay, this isn't real, right? Because it was just a picture. And then she was like, no, it's absolutely real. And I was like, who are we and where are we living and who is running this country? Because the level of childness that we saw in this post, but also just the level of cruelty and the level of admission that we've seen, right? Like, Katie, you and I both know that ultimately this is not the last that we have seen of this post. This post will most likely show up in some court filing when they are trying to determine whether or not this court has, or I'm sorry, this administration has intentionally decided that it wanted to ignore a court order. This will most likely show up in a contempt hearing. So I don't know why, I don't know who's advising, or I don't know if they really do care. The reason that I was cheering, though, was because of all courts, I cannot imagine that it was anybody on really this court, this particular court, that at 1 a.m. decided that they were going to do right, besides obviously the three that have their heads on correctly. So the fact that this wasn't a 9-0 decision is still very disappointing, but the fact that we got to a 7-2 is a win, especially at 1 in the morning. And essentially what this does is kind of like what Judge Boasberg did when he said, hey, stop, do not deliver those people into El Salvador, turn that plane around. Basically, they're saying that plane better not take off, and we know how y'all like to act. So we will see ultimately what the Supreme Court comes up with, and I'm not necessarily the most hopeful about the Supreme Court, but we also will see how this court decides to act. And I think right now they're trying to figure out, is this a administration that will even ignore our court orders? And I think that that may sway how they decide to rule on this particular underlying issue.
And you know, Maryland Senator Van Hollen just went to El Salvador after meeting with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He said he thinks that El Salvador was feeling some pressure, and that's why they let him meet with him. But ultimately, Nayib Bukele saying he's going to remain in the custody of El Salvador. We need to see more action, though, from people kind of emulating what we saw from Senator Van Hollen, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first of all, kudos to Senator Van Hollen. And honestly, that's what it looks like to be an elected representative. He represents Maryland. This is someone who is a Maryland resident, and he decided that he was going to go down there and check on him. And honestly, I don't know that I was convinced that he was alive. I really don't. And so I was happy to see that he was alive, number one. But number two, if Senator Van Hollen can get down there, if the president can get up here and get to the White House, then I don't understand why we can't get Abrego up out of there. I mean, we know that they admitted that they were wrong. Now they're trying to double back and say, well, he's this terrible person and all this kind of stuff. But here's the reality. As far as I'm concerned, he's a lot less criminal than the person that's sitting in the White House. Because last time I checked, he doesn't have any criminal convictions. I don't even think he has any outstanding cases versus the guy that still had cases pending when he was sworn in on January 20th and also has 34 felony convictions. So listen, I don't want to hear anything from the Republican Party about how they're trying to keep us safe when their fearless leader is actually the biggest criminal thus far that we have seen, because I haven't seen anybody with a rap sheet that looks like the president's.
So I want to exercise a point of personal privilege right now. I'm going to play a really quick clip for you, Congresswoman, and ask you a question on the other side. Take a watch and listen.
I talked about this yesterday. Of course, the unlawful deportation of Ago. Garcia is the most disgusting aspect of this. All but what they've done since just goes to show how evil this administration truly is. Bringing in a mother who lost her daughter to an MS-13 gang member is a tragedy, but it has nothing to do with Ago. Garcia trying to exploit that story has nothing to do with this man whose rights have been taken away from him. And the margarita photo was absurdity. Trying to claim that this guy who was snatched up from his community by mass thugs and put on a plane to El Salvador is somehow living like a beachy, a great, it's a great vibe and a great hang, and we're chilling by the pool instead of being thrown in a torture prison is disgusting. And now we see these posts lying about a New York Times story or trying to digitally alter photos of him. It's just disgusting. The effort continues, and it just shows how much they know that they have screwed up, especially because we saw Senator Van Hollen call this out in a clip right here.
Look, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I want to be as clear as possible about what this is about and what it's not about. So I'm going to read the remarks that I wrote on the plane ride home. As the federal courts have said, we need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. And it's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
Yes. Thank you.
The Fourth Circuit put it very clearly in its strong opinion yesterday, and I quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case, it is not hard at all. The government, in this case the Trump administration, is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims, in essence, that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from the courthouses still hold dear." They summed up the issue at stake perfectly. And that's why the Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia.
That's right.
Now, the Trump administration wants to flat out lie about what this case is about. They want to change the subject. They want to make it about something else. And they are flouting the orders from the Federal District Court, the Fourth Circuit Court, and the Supreme Court to facilitate his return. That's why I traveled to El Salvador, leaving here on Wednesday. And I want to express my gratitude to members of my family and members of my staff who agreed that we all must be prepared to take risks because of the current risk to our Constitution itself. In addition to having a variety of discussions on bilateral issues between the United States and El Salvador, I had two main goals. One was to urge the government of El Salvador not to be complicit in the illegal abduction and detention of Mr. Abrego Garcia and to release him. I made that request directly to the Vice President of El Salvador. The President was out of country at the time, and I've previously reported on that conversation. My principal mission was to meet with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife Jennifer and his family that I would do everything in my power to make that happen. And last night, at about 6:40 p.m. El Salvador time, 8:45 p.m. here on the East Coast, I called Jennifer to tell her that I had met with Kilmar. And I told her what he said to me, which was first and foremost that he missed her and his family. And as he said that, you could see a tear go down his cheek.
I am so glad that Senator Van Hollen is demonstrating the bravery that we need out of so many more Democrats taking this stand that couldn't be more important, and also showing this is an issue for us to win on. It shouldn't be about a political issue. It should be about a human rights issue in defending this man. But I feel like there are too many elected Democrats who operate, based on what does the polling say, Let's get a message test going. Let's focus group this one instead of just leading. It is your job to lead. It is your job to have values, to stand by them, to believe in them, to go out and espouse and execute on them clearly. What Senator Van Hollen is doing and showing Democrats, yes, people don't like Donald Trump's illegal mass deportations. Maybe you should talk about that. Not only because it's right, but it's going to help us. I don't know why I have to keep saying it's going to help us, but clearly that's the only thing that gets people to move. It shouldn't be. But then it is also our job to make sure they know. And again, I hate that we have to do this for them. You think that because we elected them, they do their job as elected leaders. Not always the case. Chuck Schumer, different story. But yeah, let's show him that we are on the side of fighting against this violation of due process, this violation of our Constitution. I saw some article with a leaked quote from an anonymous Democrat saying, it's just one person, it's just one guy. Let's not get a big fuss about this. No, these are human rights, and once they violate his, they're coming after yours next. We have to call this out. We're certainly going to on this show, and I so appreciate all the Democrats who are doing that, leading the way. Jasmine Crockett, Bernie Sanders, AOC, Senator Van Hollen, we're going to be doing it on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.